Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Lenovo Ideapad 720S. And about 2 weeks ago, we looked at the 710S Plus, which is also a current year model, but this one is a little better in a couple of ways, including the fact that it has a built-in GPU. So if you're going off to college or something and you want a nice little laptop that can play some light gaming as well, this one might be worth taking a look at. We'll be seeing how well it can perform in the course of this review. But I do want to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that this is on loan from Lenovo. So when we're done with this, it goes back to them. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This has a 14-inch display. It is a 1080p display, and it's also an IPS display, meaning it has really decent viewing angles, and I'm not seeing much bleed through on it. So very nice display, as many Lenovo laptops currently have. This one, though, is not a touch screen, so you can touch it, but it's not going to do anything when you do. It has an Intel Kaby Lake i5 processor. Their 7200U. This is the same chip that we tested on the Yoga 720 from Lenovo, as well as the 710S Plus that we looked at 2 weeks ago. So we'll do a apples-to-apples comparison as we go through some of our benchmarks. I'm finding it performs just as well as those other laptops do. But where this one has the edge is that it has a built-in graphics processor, an Nvidia 940MX. Now, this is a low-end graphics chip. It's been around for a little while, so we didn't see them go up to the new chip that just came out from Nvidia, but it is still much better to have that GPU than no GPU at all. And you'll see that when we go through some of the graphical benchmarks, as well as when we boot up some games on it. It's not going to be a real true gaming laptop per se, but it is able to run games on lower settings that these other laptops with the same configuration cannot. So a good thing to have if you're looking to do gaming or do some video editing or photo editing. The GPU helps with all of that stuff. Even some engineering work should do better on here as well. And there's some other things you can do to boost its graphical performance externally too, which I'll show you in a minute. It has 8 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. For the techies out there, it is configured in single channel configuration. It also has a 256 gigabyte SSD. Now you can upgrade the RAM and the storage on this one. However, it's not easy to get inside. There are these little tiny torque screws on the bottom here that you have to get the right screwdriver for. And then once you get in there, the hard drive is very easily exchanged. You can just pop out the M2 SATA card that's in there, but the RAM is under a metal shield that I had difficulty getting off, and I was concerned that it might damage the laptop in doing so, so I gave up on it. But it's definitely under there. It looks like it is socketed RAM, and I think you could probably go up to 16 gigabytes on here, but I am very concerned with getting that plate off, and it doesn't look like it's very user-friendly to get your upgrades done on it. So you might want to look at getting a 16 gigabyte configuration if you need that much RAM, if it's available. At the moment, it's not available on their website with that configuration. Battery life on this one, I'm coming in around 6 or 7 hours or so. That's doing some web browsing and email and other things, so it's about average based on other computers I have tested here in this class of machines, so not too bad there. You'll get less battery life if you're hitting that GPU and doing more intensive things, so just bear in mind that my battery estimates are based on usage on the more boring side of life here, web browsing, word processing, and that sort of thing there. And it weighs about 3.42 pounds or 1.55 kilograms. That is a little more on the heavier side for some of these machines we've looked at recently, but not too bad. If you do want something thinner and lighter, the Yoga 720 that I reviewed a few weeks ago might be worth considering. It doesn't have the GPU, but it should otherwise perform the same on many of the other office-based tasks you might do with it, so that might be worth looking at. That's a 2-in-1. This one is not a 2-in-1. It just goes down about this far on its screen, but it won't flip around into a tablet mode. And if you watched my review a few weeks ago of the 710S Plus, you'll know that I wasn't that crazy about the keyboard. Thankfully, the keyboard and trackpad are improved on the 720S here. This one has a full-size shift key on the right-hand side, something that was lacking on the 710S Plus. They also just improved the keyboard overall insofar as its comfort and accuracy are concerned. So nice travel on these keys. It's backlit. Really a pleasure to type on. Really no learning curve here whatsoever. Well done on the keyboard. The trackpad is also nicely put together. I've been really enjoying using all of the input methods on this computer, and it really is top-notch. Now, because this computer is a little thicker than its Yoga 720 cousin, you do have more port options on it, which we'll step through now. So right here is where the power adapter goes. It is a 65-watt power adapter that you get in the box. That number is important when we take a look at a port on the other side of the computer here in just a second. You've got a USB 3 port here, headphone microphone jack here. This little reset switch is for getting into the BIOS on the computer. On the other side, we've got a full-size SD card slot. So if you want to transfer stuff over from your video camera or cameras in general, you can just pop that card in there. It does stick out quite a bit, as you can see, but you do have the port built right into it. Right here is a full-service Thunderbolt port. This is Thunderbolt 3. It also works as a USB Type-C port. And some of the things you can do with Thunderbolt are plug it into a dock that allows you to get it hooked up to an external display with networking as well as USB and charging all through a single cable. One little cable plugs in, it charges the laptop. Again, you only need 65 watts of power here, and you can get everything to work as a desktop here without having to hook up anything else. Really convenient to plop it down, plug that in, and you're good to go. We've also done some things on a more technical level with external GPUs. You can buy these enclosure cases that allow you to use a desktop graphics processor with a laptop. We did a full video on this, which I'll link to down below in the video description, and you can see just how much more oomph it brings to your gaming and other work. So if you want to get close to desktop graphics performance, you plug that in and you're good to go. Really simple process to get that up and running. You do have to pay for it, of course, but it does work quite well. And there's a lot you can do with these Thunderbolt ports, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more. So you get power out of here, video out of here, USB data in and out. Really good stuff. An HDMI port is right here, a full-size HDMI port, and you get a USB 3 connector there as well. So good selection of ports here, and you can still use your old USB devices without additional dongles. So let's kick some things off with YouTube watching here. I've got a 1080p 60 video running without any drop frames. This is what I would expect out of one of these Kaby Lake processors, so that is a good thing. Good performance there. Let's take a look now at the NASA website just to get a feel for how fast things render in. And again, I'm seeing performance that I would expect out of this particular chipset, so all is good on that front. I did run the browserbench.org speedometer test to see how this one stacks up against other computers with the same processor, and the numbers match up with what we're seeing here in the real world. I got a score of 126.5, and that is right in line with other computers based on this very same processor, including the Surface laptop and the Yoga 720. And Microsoft Word runs just fine on here as well. We've got our newsletter template on here. It is scrolling effortlessly as it renders everything in. Text moves around just fine, and I think you're not going to have any problem getting papers done or other work on this machine, and it seems to be keeping up with all of that quite well. Now let's take a look at some more fun stuff, namely that GPU inside. Let's boot up a couple of recent games and see how it does with those. So let's kick things off with The Witcher. This is a game that a lot of you asked me to start testing here on my channel, and I picked it up during the Steam sale, and it looks pretty good here. We're running at 1080p. I've got all the settings turned down to their lowest possible settings, and I'm seeing frame rates around 20 to 25 frames per second. So not ideal, but this does give you an idea as to what you can expect out of this. So when I turned this down to 720p, also with low settings, I was able to get into the 30 frames per second range, which did make this a more playable game. So this is a good GPU. It's better than nothing, but it's not going to be as good as a dedicated gaming laptop might. But again, if you're looking for something smaller and lightweight and just want to do some casual gaming, even with some AAA titles with the settings adjusted properly, you can get yourself there. In prior reviews, I looked at this same Nvidia chipset with Grand Theft Auto 5. Same thing, you can really tweak things at the 1080p mode to get into about 30 or 40 frames per second. So it is a pretty usable platform here. Nothing groundbreaking, but good enough, especially given the size and form factor. Let's take a look at some other stuff. So here is Street Fighter V. Now this is running in their low spec mode at 720p. It doesn't look fantastic, but it plays fast, and that is what you want with this game. So we're seeing about 50 to 55 frames per second here, which is pretty good, and it's definitely a playable frame rate here for this game. And games that allow you to get those settings turned down to that level will perform better here than they will on a machine without a GPU. Let's take a look at one more game, Rocket League. Now, Rocket League is going to let us push things a little further here. So I have it at 1080p with all the settings turned up here. And as you can see, we're actually at a very playable frame rate here, about 30 frames per second. So not 60, but I think you can certainly get to 60 either by going to 720p or maybe even squeezing it out at 1080p with everything turned way down. So pretty playable, a lot more playable than it would be if we did not have a GPU on board. So this GPU does give you a little bit of a boost, especially if you are a fan of Rocket League. And on the 3D Mark Cloudgate benchmark test, we got a score of 7,364. Compared that to 5,129, which is the score we got on the 710S Plus that did not have a GPU, but it does have the same processor. So you can see what even a little GPU can do to your graphics performance for gaming as well as video editing and other things just by maybe stepping up to a model like this one that does have it built in. It does make a difference, especially if graphics are important to you. Now, I also wanted to show you the score I got when I connected the external GPU to the computer. I used a GTX 1070 desktop card, and we go from a score of 7,364 to a score of 13,775, and our frame rate jumps from 57 frames per second in the first test to about 300 frames per second. So you can see if you really wanted to bring more graphical horsepower to the mix when you're docked at your dorm room or back at home, you can plug in that external GPU, get that desktop-like performance, but then undock and take your laptop with you and still have a capable GPU when you're on the road. All right, one last thing to check out, and that is how well it can do some really high-end video here. We've got the Jellyfish file, 140 megabits per second, 4K, HEVC, 10-bit, you name it, it's in this file. Let's see how it does here. It starts right up, no issues whatsoever, and we're not dropping any frames either. Every once in a while, people remind me that I'm not using a 4K laptop, which is true, but it is downscaling that file and playing it back fine. And this is also capable of running 4K video out its HDMI or its Thunderbolt port to a television that supports that. So if you were to hook it up with one of these files, you will not have a problem playing anything back. We'll also take a look at some Blu-ray MKV files here as well. Everything seems to be working on the Blu-ray front also. So any media that you own should play back just fine on here, along with the stuff that you might find on the web too. So good stuff. Plays back just as I would expect it to in a good little multimedia machine. And overall, I think this is a very good laptop, especially for college students, because it is relatively thin, light, and portable, yet it does have the extra graphical horsepower with the GPU that's built in. That will make a difference, of course, for playing games, but it also might make a difference for engineering applications and photo and video editing, and really anything else that might take advantage of a discrete GPU. This one doesn't have a powerful one, but it does have one that makes a measurable difference in graphical performance, and that might be important to the student or you when trying to figure out what you need to get your work done. Really nice components, nice metal build all around, beautiful display, decent battery life, and I think it really can get the job done for a lot of people. Now, of course, there are computers that cost less than this that do perform better with more powerful GPUs. There's a bunch of low-cost gaming machines out there, but those are a lot larger, they're a lot heavier, the battery life isn't as good, the displays have not been as nice as what you might get on here, so there's always a trade-off to be made here, but you're paying for the engineering of a nice laptop with that GPU built in for its relatively, I think, mid-range price tag. So again, about $949 right now on the Lenovo website, and it is something that I can recommend for college students, especially those who want to play a game every once in a while. This is Lon.TV, and thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporter Kodi Falk. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.